Ruchem Aboim B'Shem Irgin Shir. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's shir from Rabbi Yakov Zev Smith Shlita, Aron hakodesh and Halachah. We would like to have the great schools of sponsoring a shir. Call Irgin Shir 718-851-8651.
A while ago we had the Shaila, the shul had a small safe that they used to use, and then they had a number of Sefer Torah donated, so they outgrew the old safe. And the question was, what do you do with the safe of used as an Aron hakodesh that you no longer need? Obviously, you can't just put the safe into Shemus, and it's a pretty expensive proposition to bury it. The question is a safe, held a Sefer Torah, really chayiv in Shemus? The truth is, today we have the other half of the Shaila, where many shuls have safes to hold the Sefer Torah, and then they have the structure, I don't know what to call it, the facade, but the design of the shul that's basically an Aron hakodesh, but that Aron hakodesh never touches the Sefer Torah. It's basically the design of the shul. It covers the safe, and the question is, if that's remodeled, do you have to put that in Shemus? I looked into the sugya, and as often is the case, before long you turn out with the whole sugya. The question of an Aron hakodesh on a daily basis as negeya to us. What can you keep in the Aron hakodesh? Can you use the Aron hakodesh? The paroiches, the steps going up. So we could refer to today's sugya as the Aron hakodesh in Halachah. And as we'll see, like it's always a delightful sugya once you know the basics. There's no doubt about it, the Aron hakodesh has an unusual kedusha. I mean, the mere fact that it contains the Sefer Torah, the Torah HaKadosh is the center of our lives. We are now in the Yemei HaSfira. We don't need more than the words of the Chinuch and Mitzvah Shin Vav. The Chinuch explains, why do we have to count down till Shavuos? We have 7 weeks of counting. Says the Chinuch, Kol Ikon Shel Yisrael Einay Al HaTorah Ubnei HaTorah Nivru Shemayim V'Aretz V'Yisrael V'Ika V'Asiba of Yitzias Mitzrayim, and therefore that's central in our lives. So obviously it should be understood that the Aron hakodesh that contains the Sefer Torah is the headquarters. It's the center, it's the command post of Klal Yisrael, of Yiddishkeit, and especially in a shul. And it's noteworthy, the Rambam in the beginning of Perek Yud Aleph of Hilchas Tefillah, he says you have to force Bnei Ha'ir to build a Beis HaKnesses and to get a Sefer Torah. In Halachah Yudalit he continues, She'ein Kedusha Sefer Torah, but of everything, the Sefer Torah has the most Kedusha, She'ein Sham Kedusha L'mayla Mi Kedusha Sefer Torah. So obviously the Sefer Torah is the most important part of the Beis HaKnesses. But what's interesting, the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos, Amei Aretz Meisim Al Shekorin LaAron hakodesh Arna. And a Amoritz dies prematurely because he calls an Arna instead of Aron hakodesh. Rashi explains, because he doesn't say Aron hakodesh, he just says Arna, Aron. Now, of course, a Yid is not Chayav Misa because he's not a Lamdan, because he's an Amoritz. And if you say Arachayim without Arachayim HaKadosh, you're certainly not Chayav Misa. So what does the Gemara mean? Evidently, the Aron hakodesh is so heilig that if you don't call it Kodesh, it's Chayav Misa. Now, of course, there's an obvious question. When you learn the Sugya, you'll see in Gemara and in Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't always say Kodesh. In fact, in the Gemara refers to Aron hakodesh as Argos. The Shulchan Aruch in Sif, when I was Simon Kuf Nun Dalet, Sif Gimel calls the Aron hakodesh Argos. In Sif Vav he calls it a Teva. But we don't see Aron hakodesh necessarily. And the Magen Avram is bothered, and Sif Katan Yudalet is bothered by that question. And he says, V'tzarech loim k'sha'oiskim b'limud shani sha'kol davar shebekedusha. What I think he means to say is, when you're learning Torah, that itself is kedusha, Aron, and it's all about Aron hakodesh. You know, it's really like, maybe it's also like you want to try to make it a little more concise. You want to save time. You know, b'loshen ketzara. The Yad Ephraim explains on that marsha, because when you're learning and you're talking about an Aron, it's self-understood. You're referring to the Aron hakodesh, so you don't have to specify Aron hakodesh. Then the Magen Avraham says another teretz, which is really a careful reading of the Gemara. The problem is not that they said the word Aron. Arona maybe is like a closet. To call an Aron hakodesh a closet, Arona, that's improper. But if you say Aron and you don't say kodesh, is nishkeferlich. But be that as it may, we see just the name Aron hakodesh has such an important function. And I was thinking, when you look into halachas, you will see a number of basic yisoidis in halacha that are based on this uniqueness of the Aron hakodesh. And I'll mention just a few. We find in the end of Kuf Nun Aleph a major discussion about living on top of a shul. We once discussed, we devoted a whole shir for this, but the Shulchan Aruch says you got to be careful not to have your home on top of a shul. The Taz writes that when I was young, he was a Rav in Kruka, and he had his home on top of the Beis Medrash, and he got very punished with the premature deaths of his children, and I attribute it because of this, that he lived on top of the shul. This is a Taz. So it's not just an Issa, it's also a Sakana. Now, the truth is today we have a major question. Many Shtiblach, the Rav, lives upstairs. In a dormitory of yeshiva, they could have the dorm rooms upstairs, the Beis Medrash downstairs. In Lakewood, many of the new developments, it's very typical. There's a big shul in the basement. This halacha and this sakana. So this is, again, we devoted a whole share, but basically it seems that the Welt is Saimech, what the Mishnah Berurah quotes, B'Shem the Rambam, that the main kapeda is not to do something genai if you're directly on top of the Aron Kodesh. In other words, on top of the shul is not the main problem. The problem is if you have a bathroom or even a bedroom directly on top of the Aron HaKodesh. And for us, it's very understandable. Because the real problem, the real Kedusha is most pronounced in the Aron HaKodesh. Now, indeed, this is the Minig HaOlam. And I saw Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, Alicha Shlomo Yotes Gimel recommends this. First, we'll put the bedrooms not on top of the Aron HaKodesh. And try not to use the area directly above the Aron HaKodesh. I know one Rav told me when he moved into his house, which is above the shul, he put a stationary, I think it was a Svarim Shrank or an Amwas, something of furniture that will not be moved. So you know that the place directly above the Aron HaKodesh won't be used, or the kids won't play on top of it. So here we see an interesting halacha that the Aron HaKodesh has more Kedusha. It could almost be a sakana if you abuse the area above the Aron HaKodesh. Now, I saw this recently in two different Bati Midrashim that the Rav lived upstairs, and they built the Aron HaKodesh outside. Now, of course, not on the street. What I mean is the place where the Aron HaKodesh was supposed to be, they knocked down that wall, and they built an Aron HaKodesh out of the house, so to speak. Of course, it's included. And this way, the whole Aron HaKodesh is outside of the house. So someone said, but the problem is it's not in the shul. It's very much in the shul. I mean, it happens to be, you extended the wall. But the point is, here we see the special zehiris regarding the Aron HaKodesh. Consider the next question. It's the Ramah in Kuf Lamed Aleph Siv Beis. The Ramah says, when there is no Aron v'Sefer Torah b'Soichai, you don't make Nefilas Apayim. In other words, you don't skip Tachlin. We try not to skip Tachlin. But if there's no Aron HaKodesh with the Sefer Torah, you say Nefilas Apayim, but you don't fall onto your hand. The Mishnah Berurah says, Aron Lav Davka, you have to have at least a Sefer Torah. Now, the simple pshat is, Mishnah Berurah brings the pasuk by Mechemes Ai, Vayipol al Ponav Lifnei Aron Hashem. The stress is, you have to have an Aron with the Sefer Torah. So again, we see a special halacha regarding Aron HaKodesh. But it's also true, the fact that this Kedusha Sefer Torah in the shul gives the shul more meaning. In fact, I saw Rav Moshe in Yeridei Chelik Dalet Siman Samachal Sif Cotton Dalet discusses a very common scenario. We have a shul that there are two chiyuvim, whether it's two brothers or two strangers, but two people need one amid. What do? So many people divide it. They divide the minyan. You daven upstairs, I'll daven downstairs. Rav Moshe is not happy with that agreement, and Rav Moshe says the other minyan is going to be downstairs in the Simcha room, for example. There's no Sefer Torah, there's no Aron, and you're not going to say Nefilas Apayim with Nefilas Apayim. So Rav Moshe says the fact that there's no Nefilas Apayim indicates that there's less Kedusha in that room than in the Beis Medrash. So why are you making a minyan and people have to daven in a less Kadosh area? Now Rav Moshe has other cheshbainis, Roivam Hadras Melech, it's better to have a bigger oilam. Now Lamaisa, many people are mekel, because if a person's a chiyav, he has the mitzvah of kibbut off daven for the yamid. I'm not getting into that yes or no question, but the point that Moshe says clearly that davening in a shul with an Aron hakodesh is a maila in the davening and is a maila in the Beis HaMedrash. It's more kedusha when there's an Aron with a Sefer Torah. Rather than the camp where I go to, there's a problem. They have an old Aron hakodesh. They couldn't get a safe into the Aron hakodesh, so they put the safe to keep the Aron hakodesh, to keep the Sefer Torah in the back of Beis Medrash. So whenever they're not laning, there's no Sefer Torah in the Aron hakodesh. That Rav Moshe in a different shuv in Chelik Dalet Siman Chaf Aleph says, as long as it's in the Beis Medrash, even though it's not in the Aron, it's good enough. In one of these shivas that I give a share in, there's a different problem, because they have the main Beis Medrash, and the Mesivta Beis Medrash is much smaller, and there's no safe in the Mesivta Beis Medrash. So whenever there's no laning, the Sefer Torah is brought to the big Beis Medrash where there's a safe. So then most of the week you're davening without a Sefer Torah. So that already Rav Moshe said it doesn't apply. It's not even in the Beis Medrash. That I saw in the Isha Yisrael Chaf Heilam Medvav quotes of Shlomo Zalman, that since there's an Aron there, and it's used whenever it can be, plus you can't leave it without a safe, you're allowed to say Tachnun, even though right now there is no Aron there's no Sefer Torah in the Aron hakodesh. There's another halacha which is based on a Gemara in Yom. It's actually a pasuk that the Kohen Gadol, when he left the Heichal, he didn't walk out like you turn around and walk out. He didn't turn his back towards the Heichal. This is an obvious attitude. You don't turn your back to Kedusha. The Shulchan Aruch and Reish Mem Beis and Yeridei Asif Tazayin says when a person walks out of his Rebbe's room, or the Rebbe's room, you don't turn around and walk out. You back up, but you don't turn your back to the Adam Gadol. Again, the same Yesod. But we see, and actually the Makar of I saw this in an earlier source, the Leket Yosha, Amid 31, but most people quote the Shar Ephraim in Gimel Tes and Pischei Sharim. The same is true. You have to be careful not to stand with your back towards the Aron hakodesh. Why? And the Shar Ephraim is very critical of that. He says, a person that stands with his back towards the Aron hakodesh, Ein lo yitoich v'yesh lo oicharayim al heichal Hashem v'shoym nafshe yichak mizeh. He does say, if you're darshaning, if you're giving a share, it's okay. But stam, if it's not l'shem Torah, don't stand with your back towards the Aron hakodesh. L'maisa, we see many Rabbanim do give a share, and they speak from the Aron in front of the Aron hakodesh. So that the Taz already in the beginning of Reish Pei Beis, the Taz says it's not a problem because the Aron hakodesh is rishus acheres. It's in a different rishus. Now, he doesn't explain what he means, but if you look in the Pischei Sharim, that's the Shar Ephraim that I mentioned, he says that usually the Sifrei Torah are higher than where the person is standing. So, Pashit, practically his back is not towards the Aron, at least the lower part of his back is not towards the Sifrei Torah. Sifrei Torah usually are elevated, higher. It's not a problem. That's the Prima Godim says this also in the end of Kuf Mem Aleph. He says even more so. He says if the Aron hakodesh is an Amma al Amma, Berum Shloishes Amos, it's an automatic embassy for itself. It's Rishus B'fnei Atma, even if it's not higher. Now, usually a typical Aron hakodesh is big enough. But the Pischei Sharim Taka recommends when you're building an Aron hakodesh, make the Sifrei Torah higher than when a person stands, so you avoid this problem. The Aruch HaShulchan and Reish Pei Vav Siv Beis says a more simple heta, even if his back is towards the Aron hakodesh, to the Sifrei Torah, but he's standing for Kavod HaTorah, it's mutter. And he brings an interesting raya, because during Duchening, here in America it's only Yom Tov and it's every day, the Kohanim stand with their backs towards the Aron hakodesh. Must be, if you're doing it l'shem Torah, l'shem mitzvah, is not a problem. I should mention, sometimes you see, when it's not Torah related, let's say there's a community affair, they have to Tzorchei Atziba, and they're making a sif in the shul, or when the Gabbai announces there's manim, or whatever it may be, other non-shiurim situations, you have to be careful not to stand with your back towards the Aron hakodesh. It would be a wonderful thing if they have a nasifa, which is not a shir, and they make a statement that we're going to move the bima to the side, not to stand with your back towards the Aron hakodesh. Sometimes you see in the yeshiva, the wannabe Baruchim get all excited when no one else is there. One fellow stands where the Rosh Yeshiva stands with his back towards the Aron hakodesh. They learn like that. They want to feel the feeling of it. That's really not right. If you want to be a Gadol Hadar, I saw two tshuvas, the Chalkas Yankiv and Yeridei Kuf Lamed, the Minchas Yitzchak Chelik Hey Siman Ayin Ches. They both wonder what the minig then was, that the mitzvah bacha said his chettel in the shul. So you have a boy all of 13 years old standing with his back towards the Aron hakodesh. He's not a Rav, but they say, no, that's good. It's a very good message. You're a bar mitzvah boy, you're important, you'll learn Torah, you'll become a gadol. So they sanction that minig. But the point is, the Aron hakodesh has to be treated with the greatest kedusha. I'll give you another mashal. The halachah is, we once discussed this as a whole share for itself, there's a chiyuv, and presumably a chiyuv daraisa, to stand when you see when you see a Sefer Torah being moved, when a Sefer Torah is going, when they're bringing it to the bima, or during Hag, we have to stand. But the chayre in halacha, there's no chiyuv to stand just because they open the Aron hakodesh. The mashal during when they say the piyutim and yam l'royim, and they open the Aron hakodesh, halacha there's no chiyuv. The Sharatzian and Kuf Mem Vav Sitkat Yud Ches says it's beferish. But the oilam nehagin bezer laseis hida l'Torah. Rav Moshe in Chelikei Lamed Ches Dalet says this is covered at Torah, which shows the Ahava v'Chavivas HaTorah. It's not really a chiyuv, but again, the Aron hakodesh is open. That's the embassy. That's the headquarters. We have to stand. There's a different halacha, also a sugya. We once devoted a whole share for this. But I had the shaila recently. There was a bacha, and the yeshiva wasn't well, and they wanted to make a minyan in his house on Shabbos, so he could hear the Kriyas HaTorah. To bring a Sefer Torah to someone's house is not pashut. The Shulchan Aruch in the end of Kuf Lamed Hey says you're not allowed to bring a Sefer Torah to Yechidim. Now there are certain heterim, if it's a minyan of people that need a Sefer Torah, or the Aruch HaShulchan says if you're bringing it for 3 consecutive lanings. Rav Moshe in Yeridei Dalet Samechalach Yud Gimel also says that there's a heta. Others say there's no makar for 3 times dafka. But one thing I will tell you, the Ramah says in Kuf Lamed Hey, if you bring the Sefer Torah a day or 2 before the laning, it's also mutter. Now the svara is, you can't just bring a Sefer Torah, lane, and bring it back. It's like, lahavdil, you could deliver pizza, but you can't deliver a Sefer Torah. Here, and we'll take it back. If you bring it a day or 2 earlier, you put it in the Aron hakodesh, so it's mechubed. The het of the Amah is 1 or 2 days before. But the Bejan of the Das Torah, on that Shulchan Aruch, quotes from a Prisha, lav dafka day or 2. If you bring it and put the Sefer Torah before davening in a makam kavua, in other words, if that home has an Aron hakodesh, it's also good. I guess the svara is that it's a chshivus. You're not just laning and bringing it. You're putting it in a makam kavua. So if you have a Aron hakodesh where you're bringing it, then you don't need 3 times, and you don't have to bring it a day or 2 earlier. Now, I always wondered, today we see that they bring something Sefer Torah, especially for Beis Avol, and they bring it in their portable Aron hakodesh. That's very nice, but it loses some of its ma'ila. The main hete of the Bejan Rav is when you have an Aron kavua. So it's not like it's not like portable. But if the Sefer Torah and the Aron hakodesh are both portable, so maybe at least that heta you don't have. But then don't forget, when you're bringing it for a minyan of people, and a Beis Avol there's a minyan, even if you don't lane 3 times, but the fact that you're bringing the Sefer Torah in an Aron hakodesh, it's kavua for a minyan. So even though it's not the kavua of an Aron hakodesh, but it's definitely enough of a heta. Another halacha, which is really the yesod of it, the idea. Shulchan Aruch Reish Pei Beis Aleph Chayev Adam Linik Kavod Gadol b'Sefer Torah uliyachad leimakim, ulachabed hamakim ahu, lahadrei biyos. That is our attitude to the Aron hakodesh and the Sefer Torah. Now let's talk tachlis. What's the halacha with using the Aron hakodesh, or perhaps even what do you do with an Aron hakodesh after you no longer need it? So I want to tell you what I saw, and I think it's a mitzvah lefarsim. In the back of Chedush Reb Shlomo Hyman, there are some imaris ketzarais nichte b'ksav yad kodesh shel Rabbeinu. Now, to appreciate what I'm going to tell you now, Reb Shlomo Hyman never said drush, because he was very much makpid on emes lamita, and drush is, it's homiletic, but it's not necessarily emes. So whatever he said was emes lamita, and he quotes this story, b'ksav yad kodesh, that there was a Rabbeinu Sadya Goyen, when he became the Rav in Surah, he wanted to found a yeshiva and needed donations. So he went collecting, and there was a gvir in Mitzrayim that gave a big sum of money on the condition that he would be able to also donate the Aron hakodesh. Fine. L'maisa, somehow it happened that someone else built and donated the Aron hakodesh, and he was very disappointed. He lost his great schus of the Aron hakodesh. So he went to Psadi Goyin and says, the deal's off. So Psadi Goyin said, you should know, by Yidin there's Torah Shebiksav and Torah Shebal Peh. Torah Shebiksav, the Makam is in the Aron hakodesh. But Torah Shebal Peh is given over to every Yid. And I quote, B'makam sheben yeshiva oimid v'loimid, shamu Aron hakodesh. Hasafsel, the stender, the chair, Aron hakodesh. Hashtender, Aron hakodesh. Kol yeshiva kula Aron hakodesh. I wasn't just saying this, he was paskening halachah and chayshim mishpat. You want to give the Aron hakodesh? Fine. Give a table, give a chair, give a stender. Learn Torah. Learning is also kedusha. So I'm going to talk a lot about the Aron hakodesh and the Torah relationship, but we have to know that the real headquarters of Torah is right now, what we're doing right now. That's Torah, that's the real kedusha. But is easier to deal with, a stender, a chair. At the end of the day, it's not the kedusha that you have to worry about shemus. But what do you do when you have an Aron hakodesh, you want to use it? Today, their safes is a great place to keep the pushkis, or to keep the silver, the mantle, or the yad. How do we treat the Aron hakodesh in our times? So the klal is a gemara in Megillah Chavav Medbeis. The basic klal is tashmishe mitzvah nizrakin. The gemara explains, if you have a mitzvah that's no longer needed, dalet minim, tzitzis, shayfa, after the mitzvah is finished, you're allowed to throw it out. Now the halacha is, we're machmir, we don't throw it out, we put it away b'derech covered. But a mitzvah, after it's no longer needed, has no kedusha. But tashmishe kedusha is nignazin. You have to put it in shemus. What's tashmishe kedusha? So the Gemara says, deluskimi, which is like the case, the mantle of a sefer, svarim, tefillin mezuzahs, and in other words, a tefillin baitel, or a mantle of a sefer Torah, or the ritzuis, that is, the ritzuis is part of the tefillin, but the mantle that touches either the tefillin or the ritzuis, that's what the Mechaz Elazar says, is considered tashmishe kedusha. In other words, taka, a tefillin baitel that holds the tefillins of the Mechaz Elazar, even though today the tefillin are in the black box, but it still touches the ritzuas that has the shakai on it, so the tefillin baitel is tashmishe kedusha. And you have to put that in shemus. The outer plastic, you could throw out. The talis baitel is only tashmishe mitzvah, because the talis is a mitzvah. It's like tzitzis. So that's the basic klal. So whatever touches kedusha is tashmishe kedusha, and it's chayiv to put in shemus. Mitzvah is no kedusha. Now you notice the Gemara did not address two important parts of the shul: the bima or the Aron hakodesh. So let's learn the next Gemara. Zok the Gemara, Amar Rava, I used to think that a bima, I'm talking about the wooden bima, has no kedusha, because you never put the Sefer Torah directly onto the wooden bima. There's always a cover. But I sucked Rava, but I saw sometimes Zimnin, that you do put the Sefer Torah directly onto the bima. Amina tashmish kedushahu va'asa. So Rava's assumption was two things. if the Sefer Torah never touches the bima, there's no kedusha to the bima. But since the mitzvah is that it does, so a bima is tashmishe kedusha. But we see the deciding factor is touching the kedusha directly. So based on this, we could suggest that our Aron hakodesh of today, that never touches the actual Sefer Torah, the Sefer Torah is always in a mantle. It touches the Atzei Chaim, but Atzei Chaim is not kedusha. Atzei Chaim is tashmishe kedusha. So the Aron hakodesh is tashmish de tashmish. But let's learn the Gemara. Zog the Gemara, if you have an old teva that fell apart, teva again is the Aron hakodesh, you're allowed to make it into a small Aron hakodesh. Now, what is the Gemara inferring? There's halachah malim the kodesh ve'ein maridin, which some say is a deraisa. You can't demote kedusha. We'll soon see the details. So the Gemara is saying to make from a big Aron into a small Aron is not maridin. It's the same level. It's the same Aron. But zok the Gemara, if you want to take the old Aron hakodesh and take the wood and fashion it into a bima, that's awesome. Why? That's maridin. Because the Gemara is assuming that the Aron hakodesh has more kedusha than the bima. If I were to ask you, why is that? I lay on the bima. The answer is yes. You lay on the bima 4 times a week. The rest of the week, the Roiv Rub of the week, the Sefer Torah is in the Aron hakodesh. So when is which holds the Sefer Torah more? Avad the Aron hakodesh. So the Gemara is giving us priorities. Aron hakodesh has more kedusha than the bima. Zok the Gemara, teva zutasi, to make from a big Aron to a small Aron is mutter. But kursaya, to make from an Aron into a bima is asa. But the question is, hagufa, why is the Aron hakodesh any kedusha? It never touches the Sefer Torah. And the Gemara then says, regarding this argas is considered tashmishe kedusha. Our kasha is why? But Gemara is fakert. Pshita, avadan Aron hakodesh is kedusha. We don't know why. And Gemara is saying pshita. Listen to the Gemara. Ma'u detema hani lav lekavod avidin l'turi ba'alma avidi kamashmalan. You might think that the Aron hakodesh is made just to protect the Sefer Torah, l'shmira. That's not kadosh. That's practical to protect it. Kamashmalan. What's the kamashmalan? L'kavod. So the Gemara seems to assume 2 things. If it's made for shmira, there's no kedusha. But if it's made for kavod, then there is kedusha. And that's the way the Arzarua in Hilchos Beis HaKnesses, Siman Shin Peivav learns that lekavod is enough to make it tashmishe kedusha. If it's just shmira, it has no kedusha. Lekavod is enough of a factor to make it tashmishe kedusha. Oy bazoi, we understand. A bima is not for kavod, it's practical. So then you have to have that the Sefer Torah touches the bima. But Aron hakodesh is one big kavod. Now, once we assume they're both tashmishe kedusha, which has more kedusha? The Aron hakodesh. And this is kamat beferish in Yeridei Reish Pei Beis Yud Beis, where the Shulchan Aruch says that the Aron, which is the Aron hakodesh, afal pi she'ein manichem by Sefer Torah kashu levadoi elo kashu betik, especially by Svadim, it's in a box. So why is it kadosh? Kulan tashmishe kedusha, and you look at the Goyin, he points out, and the Pri Megadim says it as well, because it's made for the cover of the Sefer Torah. Zokta Arzarua, we also see that if you could tell me that this Aron is only for shmira, then there's no kedusha. Shmira is a practical aspect, but it's not a kadosh aspect. Zokta Arzarua, I have to be honest with you, I could have learned the Gemara differently. I could have learned the Gemara, I might think it's l'shmira, not l'kavod, kamash malan, it's taka l'shmira. But even shmira has kedusha. If that's the case, then every Aron, whether it's shmira or kavod, is considered Tashmish Kedusha. Now he's very brief, but I think what he means to say is very practical. The biggest covet is to protect the Sefer Torah. If you can have a Sefer Torah in an Aron and there's no Shmira, so it's not going to exist. Rav Moshe and the two I mentioned earlier, Chelik Dalet Simon Chaf Aleph, and I don't know exactly, in history, but there was a time that I still remember, we kept Sefer Torah in Aron hakodesh. No one locked it, no one had safes. Then this insane thing, people started stealing Sefer Torah, Rahman al-Islam, so they started making precautions. Rav Moshe is talking when they started becoming problems with stealing Sefer Torah. So Rav Moshe says if you keep the Sefer Torah and you lock it up, it's a good idea. And I think he says that there's a chiyuv. He says it's also to leave a Sefer Torah in Aron hakodesh that's not locked. People will steal it and they'll be mavazit, chalila. And if they won't be mavazit, they'll sell it. It's just as bad. So it's I understood from there that the biggest not the biggest, but a real kavod Torah is to make sure the Sefer Torah is safe. So the Arzarua says maybe that's shot in the Gemara, I think. Maybe kavod is taka kedusha, but shmir is also. So up there is the Arzarua, but lamaisa I like the first shot. That taka, if it's lekavod, it's considered tashmisha kedusha. If it's only for shmira, you don't have a chiyuv of tashmisha kedusha. How do we paskin? So in the Ramah and Kuf Nun Dalet Aleph, that's in the Prince with the Shulchan Aruch. In the Mishnah Berurah Grade, it's in Sif Gimel. It's a whole mix-up. But anyhow, the other Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah quotes the first shot of the Arzarua. If an Aron is made for kavod, then avada that's kedusha. But if it's made for shmira, loy mikre tashmishe kedusha. The Pri Megadim in Eish Lavram Yud Gimel spells out today's Aron hakodesh, even though it never touches the Sefer Torah, but since it is for kavod, it is considered tashmishe kedusha. The Mishnah Berurah and Sifka and Tes accepts this halacha l'maisa. Now I should mention the Bi'alacha in Sif Gimel quotes the Meiri or Bein Yerucham that learn even shmira is considered tashmishe kedusha, which to me is not a big chiddush. That's the second shot on the Arzarua. And the Vilna Goyen, Bi'alacha quotes the Vilna Goyen also, that says if you have a shmira that touches the Sefer Torah, then it's also kedusha. But at the end of the day, we must realize that, at least according to the Ramah, Mishnah Berurah and Pri Megadim, if it's kavod, that's enough to make a kedusha. Once you have shmira, is machlokes rishonim, but it seems the poskim are mekel, shmira alone is not considered tashmishe kedusha. To apply this more lamaisa, let's see. I'm talking now about what I call an old-fashioned Aron hakodesh. In other words, not like today, more often than not, you see a safe and then a structure. Let's talk about an Aron hakodesh that has a good lock, but the Sefer Torahs are kept in the Aron hakodesh. It's one piece. So it's very unlikely that the Sefer Torah ever touches the actual Aron hakodesh. So does that mean it's not Tashmisha Kedusha? So Rav Moshe in Chelik Beis Mem Zayin, quoting a Karban Hasanel, you can look up the Karban Hasanel, it's Perik Daled, Sifkat and Aleph of Masechta Megillah. The Karban Hasanel spells out, L'didan, he's saying, that we have a matpachas, a mantle. Today the Aron hakodesh is only tashmish to tashmish. In other words, what he seemed to say is, the deciding fact is the Sefer Torah has to touch the Aron hakodesh actually. Now I want to mention a point. Someone, a Talmud Chacham told this to me, and I can't say, he doesn't know so either, he's just speculating. But what did that mean? In the olden days, the Sefer Torah touched the Aron? How is that shaykh? So there's an old Yekish Sheminig, something called the wimple. We have a gartel. Today everything is Velcro, but they had not just a gartel that you tied it up, but it went around and around and around. There's a whole lot of halachas regarding the wimple. But his suggestion was that gartel is real tashmisha kedusha. In other words, we have a mantle and a gartel, but they had only a mantle. Only a wimple, a gartel. So it's very possible that they only had this wimple. Part of the Sefer Torah was exposed. And that could have touched the Aron hakodesh. But whatever the case is, the Karban Hasanel or Moshe seems to quote as Halachah. Today, when the Aron hakodesh never touches the actual Sefer Torah, the whole Aron hakodesh is not more than tashmish to tashmish. However, we must mention, I can take a wonder, Rav Moshe doesn't mention the Ramah, L'chayr, the Pri Megadim, Mishnah Berurah go with that shita, that if it's l'kavod, it's enough. I'm sure Rav Moshe saw the Mishnah Berurah Pri Megadim, but maybe he passed like the Korban Asano. But at the end of the day, we have to say that today's Aron hakodesh, even if it never touches the Sefer Torah, it's considered Tashmishay Kedusha. The Chassam Sof in Chelik Vav, Siman Yud says, Aron hakodesh sometimes touches the Sefer Torah, and therefore it's considered Tashmishay Kedusha. That was in his times. Today, that doesn't happen. I don't think it ever happens. We have a gartel and a matpachas, but it seems that we go with the Ramah, the Mishnah Berurah Pri Megadim. Since it's made l'kavod, it would be considered Tashmishay Kedusha. But one thing I'll tell you, if you want to go home and ask your family an interesting riddle, how would we prioritize, how would we make the klal for the following three parts of the shul? Which has the most Kedusha? The mantle of the Sefer Torah, the bima, or the aron? So believe it or not, the order, la halacha, the most Kedusha is the mantle, that always still touches and is covered. The next is Aron hakodesh. And the third level is the bima. That's actually the Gemara. The bima is a lower notch than the Aron hakodesh. But the chiddush is that the matpachas, the mantle, is real, old-fashioned Tashmishay Kedusha. That's the Gemara. That's the luskimi. That's the case. That's the covering of the Sefer Torah. In other words, the heintige Aron hakodesh, some hold is tashmish to tashish. The heintige bima, when was the last time the Sefer Torah touched the actual wooden bima? I don't think it ever happened. So we'll say it's the covered. But the matpachas is still the original bikudushas. As far as today, more often than not, that we have a safe, and outside of that we have the structure. So lamaisa, someone could say that today's safe has no kedusha; it's only l'shmira, and he's probably right. The safe of today is made l'shmira. However, we can't forget that there are shitas in the Rishonim. There is a ruah second shot that the fact that it's shmira is enough to make it tashmishay kedusha. What's interesting is the outer part, which I mean to say the structure, the wooden structure, the design of the Aron hakodesh, more often than not, is not really part of the actual safe. You build it around the safe and it looks nice. So I wondered, is that considered today a real Aron hakodesh? The Sefer Torah goes into the safe, never touches, and it's not even part, the safe is not even really part of the actual structure that we call the Aron hakodesh. But what makes sense is that since that whole structure is there l'kavod, it would be considered tashmishay kedusha, because kavod is a key word independently. If you look in the Ramah Yeridei Reish Pei Beis Tezayin, the Shulchan Aruch speaks about tapuchei kesef v'zav she'oisen l'sefer Torah l'noi tashmishay kedusha heim. So something that's made l'noi sefer Torah would be considered tashmishay kedusha. Now the skeptic might say that the truth is the structure of the Aron hakodesh is made the nicest of the Beis HaKnesses, or for the people. You know, we have a very beautiful Aron hakodesh, but I still believe in people that we build a beautiful Aron hakodesh that's for covered for the Sefer Torah, and therefore it's tashmishay kedusha. The only question we have to deal with is, we'll soon see that the paroiches, today's paroiches, does not have a din of tashmishay kedusha. That's the Beferish Ramah in Sivav. It's lanoi. You have a beautiful paroiches. So probably once it's on the outside of the Aron hakodesh, it's considered different. The Aron hakodesh is one big covered for the Sefer Torah. The paroiches is lanoi of the Aron. Noi of the Aron is tashmish to tashmish. What can you do with the actual Aron hakodesh? So as I mentioned earlier, the sugyas and menachas of tzaddik tes malim b'kodesh v'loy meridin. There are many poskim that hold that's an issa deraisa. Others say it's the rabbanan, but it's still an issa chama. Lamashal, a child's going to camp and he can't find the belt of his robe. He needs it for swimming. To take an old gartel from a Sefer Torah and use it, Rachmana litzlan, is an issa deraisa, or the rabbanan minimally. That's merid, and you're taking a tashmishay kedusha and use it for your own purposes. Now the question is, can I put a pushka or the silver items, the becher, the shul's becher, or the mantle, the silver mantle, can I put that into the Aron hakodesh? So listen to an interesting suggestion. If I take the gartel of a Sefer Torah and I use it for a robe, that's my reading. But if I keep the Aron the way it is, all the Sefer Torah there, I happen to squeeze in a becher or the pushka on the side, why am I doing anything terrible? Both are existing simultaneously. Sefer Torah and the Aron hakodesh is there, and I'm keeping things on the side. And that's the sheet of the Marshal, quoted by the Bach in the end of Kuf Nun Gimel. He says, if you take an Aron and use it only for non-Sifrei Torah, that's my reading. If there's nothing else but the pushko or the other things, that's my reading. But if both are coexisting, you have a Sifrei Torah where they belong. And if you have room on the side, you use it for a pushka, why is it so bad? But the Bach himself says it's not true. He says, L'maisa, you're using the Aron hakodesh for non-Sifrei Torah. The Magen Avram quotes the Sefer Chassidim, Tov Sof Kuf Lamed Daled, that even to keep Yeriyos of Sefer Torah in the Aron hakodesh is improper. The point is, I think we can understand it. You're taking Kedusha, Tashmish Kedusha, and using it for non-Kedusha. That's the biggest demotion. You don't have to taka only for non-Sifrei Torah. The fact that you're using it for a lesser Kedusha or non-Kedusha, that itself is my reading. That's demoting Kedushas Aron hakodesh. Now, the Sefer Chassidim is one of the Rishayim, don't forget. And he's saying a Chiddush Pella. Worn out Urias of a Sefer Torah don't belong in an Aron hakodesh. Why? It's Kadosh, but it's not a Sefer Torah. Do you know that there's a whole discussion in the Paiskim if you're allowed to keep Pasal a Sifrei Torah in the Aron hakodesh? It's very, very chashiv, but it's not a Sefer Torah. So the makar to be makel is the Shivrei Luchais Munachim Ba'aron, but it's not really a raya, because the Aron was made to keep Shivrei Luchais. But who said the Aron hakodesh was made to keep Pasal Sefer Torah? But Kvar Nohagu, that's the minik Be'ein Lahara. But to keep a pushka, or the silver mantle, or the Keser Torah in the Aron hakodesh, seems to be Keneged Halacha. Even though the Sifrei Torah are there, but you're using it for a non-Kedusha purpose, and that's an Avla. So why do we see sometimes that the Welt is Mekel? So this is based on a Yushalmi and Megillah, Perigimel Halacha Aleph, L'kach hisnu alav mi betchila. Zakti Pnei Moshe, when a person donated, or when the shul built an Aron hakodesh, they made it Tanai. We might need use the Aron hakodesh for non-Sefer Torah purposes. And the Torah in Kuf Nun Daled says you're allowed to use an Aron and anything else when you have a Tanai. Now what he's saying is a Davar Gadol, because the biggest Kedusha in the Beis HaMedrash is the Aron. And the Yushalmi says even by Aron hakodesh a Tanai helps. So certainly by a Bima or other things. And we find this in Archaim Kuf Nun Dalet Ches and Yeridei Reish Pei Beis Tezvav. The Shulchan Aruch Lashon is Moil by Tanai L'shtamish by Shar Tashmish Afilu Choyel. And again, the Chiddush is even Aron hakodesh Tanai helps. Certainly anything else in the Beis HaKnesses. Now, I just want to explain. You can't make it Tanai. I'm making it Tanai. I'm going to be Oyvan and Issa because I called it. I said it first. It's ridiculous. The Tanai works that before it became Kadosh, it didn't become Kadosh. You withheld, you prevented the Chalois Kedusha. That's why the Tanai must be made before you started using it. You just wake up one day, I'm making it Tanai, from now on I want to use it. It doesn't work. And that's Taka why the Trumas Hadeshen in Chelik Aleph, Reish Ayin Gimel has a problem. He says, today we see people using the Bima, using the Aron hakodesh, and they didn't make it Tanai. What's the heta? You can't decide one morning I'm making it Tanai. It has to be before you used it at the first time. And Zok the Trumas Hadeshen, based on a Gemara, a Gewaltige Chiddush. Since it's impossible to have a Bima without using it, don't forget, Mitzad Halachah, if the Bima is Tashmishe Kedusha, then you can't put a siddur on it. The Gabe can't put a chumash on it. You can't lean on it. You can't put svarim on it. It's only for Sefer Torah. So Zakti Trumas Hadesh, that means whenever a person donates a bima, he's donating a public michshel. Aron hakodesh is a public michshel. Must be, and he quotes a Gemara that this lashon leiv bezdin masna, which means even though you didn't verbalize it tonight, but it's understood you can exist in a shul by not using the bima. Therefore, even though you didn't make it tonight, it's as if you made it tonight. So at the end of the day, the leiv bezdin masna means you made it tonight, not consciously but subconsciously. After all this, and it's a pretty long tshuva, he says, Nitchakti k'dei liyayishev k'tzas ma she'ein ha'olam nizorin. I quetched, I daichik, to find a k'tzas yishev on minig ha'olam. So, the Ramah in Sif Ches quotes this Trumas Hadeshen, that since Noagu Kain, the Efshali Zohar, leiv bezdin masnaleya me'ikara. That's the Trumas Hadeshen. Even though you didn't make it tonight, it's as if you made it tonight. In other words, you'll ask the Nadvan who donated the bima, did you make it tonight? He goes, what is that? He has no idea. But it's as if it's understood. But the Magen Avraham picks up on that, and he says the lashon of the Trumas Hadeshen is nitchakti kedei liyayishev k'tzas. Don't rely on this initially. In other words, if you are donating a bima or a kodesh, make it tonight. Don't rely on the Trumas Hadeshen, because even the Trumas Hadeshen was not excited to rely on the Trumas Hadeshen. Nitchakti k'dei liyayishev k'tzas. But let me just show you how Yidden was sensitive even after a tonight. L'choyer. The Taz in Sifkat and Zayin, our Kuf Nun Dalet, has a scandal. He says people, when they empty out the Aron hakodesh on Shana Rabbah. Now today we see this minig on Simchas Torah. When the Sefer Torah, when the Aron hakodesh is empty of Sifrei Torah, I see people putting in a nair into the Aron hakodesh. Frag the Taz, what's the heta? Why is a nair in Aron hakodesh? It's not a Sefer Torah. Probably it's to show kiner mitzvah v'Torah or, and there's no Sefer Torah, so we're in darkness. We have to put in a light. But ein zeh maspik. You're being married b'kedusha. You're making the Aron hakodesh into a candle holder. I don't buy it. So obviously, he must have known about it tonight. It's a Ramah, but he wasn't happy with even that. So don't do it. Lemaisa Devel does it. In some place I've seen this. It has to be working out a double fact, two factors. First of all, it's covered for the Sefer Torah. But besides that, we have the Tanai. And if there was no Tanai, at least leiv bezdin mas. But it's a pliya. I mean, who would even question that? It's such a beautiful, meaningful minig, ner mitzvah Torah, but the Taz says nothing doing. But the Paiskim do say, even if you rely on this Tanai, or on the leiv bezdin mas, it can't be a Genai. I saw the Or Letzion in Memhei Samach Beis, and Shlomo Zalman is quoted as saying, to keep a hat on the bima is improper. A hat is not a beam is not a hat rack. Keep the coffee, you drink coffee, you dump the cup on the bima, it's understood. What's more pashit, unfortunately you see this sometimes, you have a small shul, and comes the kiddush, and the bima is the center of the kiddush. You have 7 types of herrings floating around on the bima. I mean, ein lecha genai g'dei lemizu. Rapam once told me, he says, when I see a hat on the bima, told me in English, it makes me sick. I wonder how sick he would have gotten when he would see what's going on by a kiddush, this kugel and this schmaltz herring. That's totally inappropriate. Even with a tanai, a bazayin doesn't work. The Paiskim discuss putting the haftarah, the klaf, those that have a klaf, into the Aron hakodesh. Even though it's nach, but it's not Torah. Don't forget, in the Gemara we learned Torah goes on top of the V'im Ksuvim. So look how you have to kvetch to find a heta, even when you have a Tanai. So the Maisa, the minig is that you can put the klafim because you made a Tanai. But don't forget, there's levels of Kedusha. Now, the truth is today we see in many shuls a simple eitzah. They make 2 parts of the Aron hakodesh. The top part is the Sifrei Torah, and the bottom part they put either the klafim or they put the Keser Torah, other things. That would avoid all shilas, because once you made it 2 parts, so the first part is Tashmisha Kedusha, and the second part is just Tashmisha Mitzvah. But what to me is inspiring, the Paiskim discuss this about the minig, quote unquote, of putting the klapta shanis on top of the Aron hakodesh. Now, the way some people do, you would swear that it's engraved in the Aseres HaDibros, but it's really not. If you make a cheshbon, the Gemara says even a esrig, which is a mitzvah deraisa, dalet minim, is tashmishe mitzvah nizrakim. So, maduch a mitzvah deraisa has no kedusha, haishanis is just a minig neviim, has no kedusha. But Aron hakodesh, the same Gemara says, is tashmishe kedusha. So, vi kumt is that you put geklapta shanis on top of an Aron hakodesh. It's mamash a violation of our Gemara. We find in Shulchan Aruch, right? I'll tell you what we find in Taf Reish Samach Dalet Ches. The Shulchan Aruch says that the aravais after Sukkis, don't step on them. Put it in a makam mechubah. Don't throw it on the ground and step in it. Zok the Mishnah Berurah, hu adin the Yoshanis. So we find again a zehiris, a heightened sensitivity that you didn't have, even though you could throw it in the garbage, really. But don't throw it in the garbage. Put it in a makam mechubah. But it doesn't say you put it on top of the Aron. The Beis Yosef and Taf Reish Samach Dalet says use the Hashanis and bake matzah with the fire from the Hashanis. Mishnah Berurah and Taf Mem Hey Sif Katan Zayin says use the Hashanis to burn the chametz. All wonderful. But Man Dechar Shmei put on top of the Aron hakodesh. The El Yerab and Taf Reish Samach Dalet Yud Gimel quotes Al Busha Yamtiv, a minig pella, that after you finish the Hashanis, take them home and put it by your bedside. Now, some people hang up the Afikoimen, they used to hang up the Hashanis. All these minhagim I have no problem with. But putting it on top of the Aron hakodesh, and Taka the Mechasalaz and Darkei Chaim V'Shalom Tov Shin Tzad Gimel, was opposed to the minig. Now, I think that his real problem was you're taking Hashanis, you're throwing it. So the kedusha of Hashanis, the shemus in it, that's what seems the real problem is. But he was against the minig of throwing on top of the Aron hakodesh. Why do we see many shuls have that minig? So you look in the Marsham in Chelik Dalet Nun Zayin, he says the heter is leiv bezdin masna. It's done. Now Yid told me recently. He says it's. I asked him. I spoke about it in a different place. This sugya. So some said, "What do you mean? Isn't that the covet for the Aron hakodesh that it has Hashanis on it?" That was a tmimistik heilig yid. It became such a minig that that it becomes the night. Okay, gesundheit. Now, technically, you might argue that to put something in the Aron hakodesh is improper. On top of it, you never put a sefer Torah on top of the Aron hakodesh. Maybe it's like a reshus b'fnei atzmai. So the ma'isa, those that do it, there's what to be saimach. But just the sensitivity of it shows us that we have to approach these shilas with great kedusha to it. If you have an Aron that you no longer need, so in the olden days, when it was a really tashmishe kedusha, it was nignazim. Someone just told me a shul that they buried an unneeded Aron hakodesh and a safe, like the Gemara, nignazim. But the truth is, I think you realize that an unneeded safe, maybe there's no chiyuv of geniza. If it is l'shmira, like most paiskim, shmira doesn't have a kedusha. Now, Lamaisa, the best eitzah, I want to make a shidduch here, which I think is important. There are some shuls, a lot of shuls today, it's more and more, they have these concurrent minyanim, and they don't have that many sefer Torah, and they end up bringing a sefer Torah from one room to the next. Now, the truth is, Halachah, you could say from cheder to cheder is not a problem of transporting a sefer Torah, but it disturbs the davening. They bring in the sefer Torah, and in the middle of Krishma, everybody has to stand up because they're taking it out, and they bring it in. So the shuls that don't need those safes should donate it to the shuls that have these minyanim and keep the Sefer Torah in the safe. This way you don't have to keep moving it back and forth. I can't say it's wrong, but it's definitely problematic to bring Sefer Torah back. Both shuls have to stand up during davening. So if you don't need it, put up an ad and someone will take it and, zenena v'zenena. Rabbi Yashiv in Chelik Gimel Chafei has a detailed tshuva. What to do with the wooden Aron hakodesh that's no longer needed. So he has a whole cheshbon. Sell it. Zayin Tuvi are allowed to sell it. So the kedusha comes off the Aron. Use the money to buy tilims for a shul. This is exact lashon. Then take the Aron hakodesh that has less kedusha because you sold it and burn it. He says he's preferably burn it like boima with a Shimba Yachai's delay. That's what he says. And then take the ashes and burn and bury the ashes. after you converted the Kedusha onto the money, that's a sensitivity to an Aron hakodesh. Okay. But one thing I will say, someone asked me, he's donating a new Aron hakodesh, what should he do? So by all means, make a Tanai. Don't be relying on Lev Bez the Master, make explicit Tanai that they shouldn't have the full Kedusha. It's also advisable to make a compartment on top and on bottom, the Sefer Torah on the top, and whatever you put on the bottom would be without Shilas, because that is miyuchid for Tashmishay Mitzvah. What's interesting is the Paroichis, we see right behind me, in Cheshbon today has no Kedusha, because it never ever touches the Sefer Torah. So it's a Tashmish to Tashmish. And the Trumas Hadesh in Chelik Beis Reish Chaf Eitake says, Paroichis Gufa, he says it's a Tashmish to Tashmish. Yet in Shulchan Aruch Kuf Nun Daled Gimel, the Shulchan Aruch says it has Kedusha v'tzarech leganzim. You have to put it in Shemus. Zog the Mishnah, that was in the times of the Gemara, that lefa'amim menichin Sefer Torah aleh, oy shayim chasin boy Sefer Torah, and it was matzui, Zog the Mishnah. So therefore it was a real Tashmishi Kedusha that touched the Sefer Torah. But today, the Paroichis is no more than a Tashmishay Mitzvah. And Taki sends you to Sivav, and the Ramah in Sivav says the Paroichis Sha'anachnu, Toilin, is no more than a regular Tashmishay Mitzvah. In fact, he adds that you're allowed to take a Paroichis from the Aron hakodesh and make it into a covering for a bima. Now, I found this beautiful, because really you can't make from an Aron hakodesh into a bima. So why could you make from a Paroichis Aron hakodesh into a covering for the bima? Teretz is that it never had Kedusha in the first place. But Aron hakodesh to bima doesn't work. It's only the Paroichis that's mutter. Now you'll be allowed to say, so one second. If the Paroichis is no longer for the Sefer Torah, so why do you need it? So the Sibel Cheshbon is, it's nice, it's covered. But I'll tell you a Davar Nifla. The Trumas Hadeshin in Siman Samaches, Paroichis Shalifnei Aron hakodesh, that already has a door, so why do we have it? HaParoichis Einoi Toli Sham El Tznius. That's his Lashon. That's a very beautiful choice of word. Because we associate tznius with dresses and sleeve length. Tznius is protecting Kedusha. The more something is important, the more it has to be kept b'hatznei aleches. And if you look in the Zera Emes, in Chelik Aleph Siman Chavav, he says that the minig of Paroichis is lenoi, but it's also the tznius yesera, and he quotes the pasuk v'vdila Paroichis bein hakodesh ubein hakodesh hakadoshim. In other words, Yidden have an appreciation for a heightened kedusha. The shul is kadosh, but the Sefer Torah is Kodesh HaKadoshim. Tznius does not only apply to women. Tznius is protecting something of great Kedusha. In the shul, the greatest Kedusha is the Sefer Torah. And it has to be protected. So even though there's an Aron, but you do something extra. That's why it's interesting, Avshalom Zalman, in Halicha Shleima, Yotes, Ha'ara 16, he was asked by Yeshul that they built a magnificent Aron hakodesh made of glass. And by Saradim especially, there's no Paroichis, it's just the Aron hakodesh. They thought it was beautiful. Zalman says, you have to make a glass that's not see-through. The Sefer Torah has to be covered. Tznius. Tznius, in a very exquisite way, is keeping something heilig, b'hatznei aleches. Cover it. If you can't change the Aron, he says, at least make it non-see-through, and he wasn't happy about that either. So the Paroichis has a prominent role. And Achrein Chaviv, in many shuls today, we see a platform in front of the Aron hakodesh. Here it's a smaller platform, many shuls have a bigger platform. Does that have Kedusha or not? Or more specifically, can you walk, and you have to go from one side of the shul to the other, can you walk over the platform? So the truth is, to my knowledge, there's no makar for a platform in a Aron hakodesh, but there is a source of making 3 steps going up to Aron hakodesh. This is based on you find in the Mikdash that the Duchen had 3 steps. That's Mishnah Midas, Perik Beis, Mishnah Vav. So that's the makar of making 3 steps going up to the Aron hakodesh. So I imagine once we have 3 steps going up, you have to go up. So there has to be a platform. So it seems that we could say that the 3 steps, of course, is a minig. Once you have 3 steps, you can't, you're not going to fall down, so you have a platform. But no doubt about it, once we understand that the Paroiches already has no Kedusha, so the platform has no Kedusha, so walking on it is a gefilzach. Some people feel it's not proper, they don't want to walk on the platform, Tavalei and Bracha, or Mechaber Satayra. But one thing I will say, if you walk on the platform, be careful not to go with your back towards the Aron hakodesh. That taka we know is an avla. But basically, it's all about us being kadosh by learning. A guten tag to you all.
Hashem Egen Shir Torah would like to give a big yashikah to our Smith for today's shir. Our Smith will say a sikkim of today's shir in 5 minutes. So Chananya ben Akashem Marat HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Zakis is Yisrael L'Figir Hibel Torah Mitzvah Shem Al Oinoi Chofetz Aman Tzidka Yagdol Torah V'Yadeh.
That helps. So when you take it off, you could use the armor. You can use the beam, no problem. But if we had a special one that you couldn't say prayer on, if you put the same prayer on, it's a problem with the atom, or even the same. But that's the kind of thing you put it right. So you mention it. Let me see, maybe it doesn't tell you how it's done.
like a, it was a gospel, like a big piece. They didn't have the. Nice, I'm not kind.
Oh yeah. I was saying, company Aron hakodesh.
But the land by time they don't have a shop, they don't have milk there. But by time it's over, he never takes it out. Yeah, but he never takes it. The center is always there. I think now shop and the down there also. 36th Street, that big building there. Walls are counting this. So you don't learn it. Once you finish it, save it. Once you finish it, you finish it.
Here. So why did they read?
You can't fix it sometimes.
Never could be fixed that more than I really says this Chazmi says, right from Aron is the sugar that was out of That's clear.
No, simple. Why not? Some people say, go, take care of them, I can go. Take care of them.
Simple.
Let's go.
All week. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, turn around.
Got a place to see them.
What do you do?
He didn't want to use it for his Gemara. Even though he said, I made it, that's just the purpose of making it. It's like the headquarters.
Okay, Rabbi, so we're all standing in front of the Aron hakodesh.
Yeah, I don't know.
So that we're facing Mizrach or Ma'ariv. We're going to hear the Sikkim from a Smith now on the Shir of Aron hakodesh. Shh.
Okay, just to review what we learned today, the most important place in the Beis Medrash is the Aron hakodesh. It's the headquarters of the Sefer Torah. And we even refer to it with a special title, Aron hakodesh. Unless you're learning, the Magen Avraham said you could be Mekel. But basically, that just puts us in the right mood to approach the sugya. We see many halachas regarding the Aron hakodesh. We're not supposed to live on top of a shul, which the main concern is on top of an Aron hakodesh. Someone pointed out correctly, when there's a Leileno Beis Oval and they have a Sefer Torah there throughout the week of Avelis, you should be careful to keep the Sefer Torah in a place where it's not, where something on the top of it is not a bathroom or sleeping quarters. You can make a cheshbon to keep the Aron hakodesh in the right place. If there's no Sefer Torah, there is tachnun, but no nefilas apayim, unless the Sefer Torah is in a different part of the room or even in a different part of the building. If Shtem was Mekel, if there is the Sefer Torah there, with an Aron hakodesh there, that's used whenever they can keep the Sefer Torah there. One should not stand with his back towards the Aron hakodesh unless the Aron hakodesh is Rishis B'fnei Atzmai, or it's higher than the person, or it's covered at Torah as a Rav, or giving a shir, or even a Bar Mitzvah boy, but stam for announcements or non-Torah purposes. One should be careful with this inyan. The minig is to stand when the Aron hakodesh is open, even though there's no chiyuv. You bring a Sefer Torah to a private home, either you're doing it for a minyan of people, that's used for a few days, 3 times. Some say it's a chiyuv, but if it's not 3 times, at least you bring it a day or 2 earlier and you put it in a makam mechubed. Some say even the same day. If you put it in a makam mechubed, that's enough. Basically, today the kedusha is learning Torah, the table, the chairs, the standards, the laimdei Torah that has the kedusha of the Aron hakodesh. The basic klal is whatever touches kedusha or is made lekavaid is considered tashmishe kedusha. Shmira ba'alma, the Shulchan Aruch is mekel, and there are machmirim, but at least what it touches the sefer, the actual sefer Torah or kavaid is considered tashmishe kedusha. Aron hakodesh is more often holding a sefer Torah than a bima, so it has more kedusha. But the real kedusha is the matpachas that touches the sefer Torah on a constant basis. The old-fashioned Aron hakodesh that the Sefer Torahs were in, l'chayr should need geniza, some are mekel, because it doesn't touch the actual Sefer Torah, but at least according to the Mishnah Prima Godim, a regular Aron hakodesh that the Sefer Torah was sitting in them would require geniza. A safe that you keep the Sefer Torah, l'chayr, doesn't have kedusha, and I don't know if I mentioned it, but you're allowed to keep other things there if you hold there's no kedusha. If you go with the shita, the shmir is not kedusha. The structure is made lanoi, that has its own kedusha because it's made lanoi. Ein meridin is an issa Torah, and even if you keep the Sefer Torah in that place, but put something that doesn't belong there on the side, that's also ein meridin, the way the Bach, Magen Avraham, and most paiskim paskin. Even to keep Yiriyos of a Sefer Torah is improper. The only heta is to keep a Sefer Torah apostle. But the real heta is if you made a Tanai, you're allowed to use the Aron hakodesh or the bima for non-bizyoinos. You're allowed to use it for divrei chayil. The Chumash Hadeshin takes it a step further, even if you didn't make it Tanai, but it's an automatic leiv bezdin masna. And that's why the minig of keeping, some have the minig keeping a ner in Aron hakodesh, either Shoshana Rabbah or Simchas Torah, but to keep food or a hat or a coffee cup on the bima is improper. Aron hakodesh that's made of 2 parts is mutter to use the bottom part for tashmishe mitzvah. Haishanis, the minig, those that have the minig, we could justify the minig. Those that don't have the minig, you don't have to start doing it. It's not a chiyuv. It's basically based on a leiv bezdin masna. The old safe that you don't need it, better to give it to someone else, but there is a tzad, you're allowed to sell it, and because it doesn't have the kedusha, it was only made l'shmira. Before you donate a Aron hakodesh or a bina, make a specific verbal tanai, And the best to make the Aron hakodesh that's user-friendly has a top part and the bottom part that you can use for non-kedusha. A paroiches is not tashmisha kedusha. It's made with tznius to keep the kedusha of the kodesh hakodoshim. The 3 steps leading up to the platform has a minig in halacha, but it's not tashmisha kedusha. Just don't walk and stand with your back towards the Aron hakodesh.